Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today, a storm of power orbs mysteriously rain on the world. You'll be learning to wield the orbs as you lead a team of creatures in card power combat to claim valuable treasures by activating abilities with perfect timing to crush the competition and become the area champion. Faction Fighters is for 2 players, takes 25 minutes to play, for ages 10 and up, and published by Thunder Finch Games. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to take one of the pre-built teams. Now each of these decks comes pre-assembled, 20 cards in each deck, and you'll select one of these two. This is Team Hiss, and this is Team Galazar. Now you're also going to select one of the multiple of the area decks. We're going to actually choose Starfall Fields here, but each of these decks comes with different cards. They're going to have different events, they're going to have different setup rules, and sometimes different things will happen in these decks and different win conditions as well. It's almost like these are different little mini games of how you win and how you play as well. Now in this Starfall Fields, essentially you're going to shuffle the area deck, and there's going to be a face-up deck and one card that's active each round. This is the card that both you and your opponent are trying to fight to win. And these cards are going to do different things. Many times it's going to give you points, like 3 points and 1 point. Other times it'll do different things that we'll show you as well. But essentially, each one of these cards you're trying to win is 1 round. And at the end of this, once all of these are gone, you're going to add up your points, and whoever has the most wins. That's what you're trying to do with the Starfall Fields area deck. Now this is generally how you set the game up. Each player is going to sit on opposite sides of the table. They're going to have their 20 card deck from their pre-built team, and the area deck is here, and these are normally turned sideways so that both players can see them equally, but for the video I'm going to turn them so that you can see them. It's easier for the camera and the video for you. Now each player is going to shuffle their deck, and they're going to have a hand of cards. There's actually going to be 6 of them at the beginning of the game. Now these cards are typically secret in your hands, but I've placed them on the table so you can see them. Now these teams, even though they have different cards, they're built in a similar way, meaning each team has 3 triple factions. And that just means that each one of these triple factions has 3 cards within that faction. Each of them have 1 double faction, meaning each of these double factions have 2 cards of that faction, and they each have 1 legendary faction. There's 1 card of each of those there, and then they both come with some standard cards as well. Now the game is played over multiple rounds, and each round goes through 4 different phases. We've already done sort of the drawing in the beginning of the game, so we go right to the scout phase. Now in this phase, players are going to play a fighter face down, and once they're both ready, they will reveal it. Now again, remember, typically in between the 2 players, the area deck cards are there that you're trying to fight over, but I've removed those so it's a little easier to see how the gameplay works. So now we've flipped it over. Now we have played a card from our Dingo faction. It's one of our triple faction cards, and they have played one of the Metagon, so this is one of their triple factions. This is Galazar. Now we've each played one of those and we've revealed them. Then we go to the Bolster Phase. Now in the Bolster Phase, players are going to put a certain amount of cards down that they choose, but they're actually going to have their hands covering the piles so that the other player can't tell how many cards are down. And once they're both ready, they're going to flip over those cards. And so after we bolster, we do resolution. Now let's say these were the cards that were out after the bolster phase for each of the players. And one thing that's going to happen is there are these power orbs, and they're going to activate certain abilities on the fighters there. For example, this one says, hey, I can spend 1 to gain +2 strength for each wild we have in play. Well, we have 2 of these. So this +2 strength for each of these is going to give us 4, a total of 4 extra strength. Added to the 6 here, that's 10, plus 4 is 14, because that's total strength. Now the fighters also have some other numbers here. These are the strengths of the other, or all, I should say, fighters in this specific faction, and the total if you had put them all together. So by spending this, we're going to get a total of 14 strength. Now this one has a power orb as well, and they can use this. This is 3 plus 2 is 5, 6, 7, 8. And then if we have the most fighters, this player has the most fighters, they'll gain 5 strength. And they do have the most fighters, so you're going to add 5 to all that. So it's 13 to 14, and this player has higher strength, so they would win that card. And those cards are placed in a play area in front of you, and you're keeping these over the course of the game. And essentially, we've just won 3 victory points. Now after this, we do some cleanup. The loser is going to destroy their lowest strength fighter in play. So in this case, they would destroy this card. It would go into a destroy pile off to the side outside of the game. Now both players will destroy any power orbs, so these would go into their corresponding destroyed piles off to the side. And the rest of the fighters that were played are placed in the corresponding player's discard pile, which is next to their draw deck. So in this case, we have our discarded cards, we have the card that we won from the event, we have our draw deck, and off camera to the side are our destroyed cards in a pile. Then you would simply reveal the next card. So this round we're fighting for Stargaze, which is 1 point. But notice that some of these cards do different things. Like next round, you're going to be fighting over this card, which is worth 2 power orbs. So the winner takes this card into their hand, and then they're going to be able to use it on the next, as soon as the next round. And these are worth 2 power orbs, but then you'll obviously destroy it after use. Or maybe the next card is 3 power orbs. Or maybe the next card gives you a point and allows you to draw a card. Now drawing these cards is important because at the beginning of every round, you're going to draw 2 cards from your deck into your hand. And if this deck's ever empty, you're going to shuffle this discard pile, make a new draw deck, and you're going to draw so that you've drawn 2 cards that turn. So you try and decide when to use which cards and how many you're going to play that round, knowing that you're only going to be able to draw back up 2. Now let me show you a couple more aspects of gameplay. During that scout phase, when both players play a card face down, you flip it up. In the last example, we both played fighters from our triple factions, and here we've played a wild. And this is interesting because now, during the bolster phase, I can play as many of the same faction, but it can be any faction because I chose a wild here. It gives you some more flexibility, where if this player wants to play more fighters, they must do so from this faction or wilds. Now when you go to the bolster phase and we had, players had covered and then revealed, you could have been bluffing, and you had this single bluffy card down, and when you play that card, instead of other cards, essentially this bluffy allows you to return this card to your hand and you're not putting anything else out, because when you were looking at this, you're like, well, there's probably not a good chance we're going to win, I'll have them waste cards, and I was sort of just bluffing this bolster phase. And since this player didn't play any power orbs or anything like that, we just add the strength. Clearly this wins. This one would get destroyed because it's the lowest fighter. That's pretty much how it works. So this player would have won that event card. Now, if this player had, in addition, during the bolster phase, played this 2 orbs, they could have used this, and if they win, which they did, they could have destroyed one of your opponent's treasures, which is what we had just won previously, which was that 3-point crater treasure. Now, during the scout phase of the next round, let's say it looks like this. We've played our single and only legendary fighter. Now, when you play this, you must play it solo. You don't play it with other fighters or wilds or anything like that. But let's say it looked like this. After the bolster phase, both players played power orbs. This was ×3. Maybe they were trying to activate all 3 of these abilities. But this one says if your opponent played any power orbs, they have no effect and you gain 3 strength. So these don't have any effect. And since this player gains 2 strength, they're at 15 to the other player's 13, so this player would win the round. In Starfall Field, you'll keep playing these rounds until the last card has been won, and then you'll add up all the points on all the cards you've won. Whoever has the most is the winner. So let's look at some of these other area decks. This is the Doomsday Bay, and this has many different cards in it, so let's talk about how these work. Now, there's many cards in this deck, but I'm just showing you the ones that are unique to this deck, and there's multiple copies of some of these and things like that. The Beachcomber, it works the same way as like the top card gets flipped over or put to the side, and that's the one you're going for. Now here, when you win this card, you can put it either way. If you put it this way, it's worth 3 points. It's a Beachcomber treasure. Or you can flip it over this way when you win it, and essentially it's preparing for the storm. You get +4 strength for the boss event, because at the end you're going to fight a boss. Now here is just 1 point, but at the beginning of the boss event you can draw an extra card from your deck. Now when you flipped one of these, you can flip it back. If you win this card, it's worth a point, and you can decide to reverse one of yours or your opponent's treasure cards to the opposite side, so you can change the strategy that way. This is just a point. Now the bottom card will always be the boss. How the boss works is you're going to fight your opponent like normal. Whoever wins, and if you had a strength of at least 15, you'd win this card. Now this is actually an older version of the card. It's actually really 6 points. You would get that, but every player with less than 15 must destroy one of their Beachcomber treasures. And whoever has the most points into this one wins. Now this deck also comes with a triple faction and a double faction. These get placed off to the side. In the future, you can, instead of having your started prepared decks, you can draft. And you'll essentially have 3 sets of triples, 1 set of doubles, and 1 legendary. But you're able to go through a drafting procedure back and forth with your opponent and drafting a specific faction, for example. And so this just gives you more strategy to the game, setting up your own deck before you start. Now in the Gem Hollow area deck, you will get a triple faction and a legendary faction, and you will draft your team at the beginning of this one. Again, going back and forth, picking your triple faction, double faction, legendary faction, and again, you're only having 1 of each of those, and you're putting them all out from both the ones that have been unlocked in decks like this and from the starting playing pre-built decks. Now these 3 global gems are placed out. The number of dots shows how many cards there are in this deck of that gem type, and they each start at 1 point. And like normal, this is shuffled and you're fighting for this card. And if you win this, it has a question mark because this is going to be worth how many points this is over the course of the game. Because in a future round, let's say you'd won this and this comes out, this one says you place underneath the global gem to make the treasures worth an additional point. So you could essentially go like this. And so now the blue sapphires are going to be worth 2 points for each of them. And like the others, you'll play until the last treasure has gotten. You'll add up, each of these will be worth however many the globals are worth, and whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. Now the Shard Peak area deck does also come with 2 triple factions. Again, these will be added to the pool of factions that you can draft at the beginning of the game. Feel free to pause and look at what these factions do and all their abilities in more detail. Now let's look at all the corrupted creatures in this. Let's say we're going for this event card. If the sum of both players' combined strength is 19 or higher, the one that has the most is going to gain this card. This card's gonna be worth a certain amount of points, and this card specifically is plus 4 points if your opponent's corrupted. If the strength total was less than 19, then the one that has the less strength that round takes this card, but they turn it sideways and they are corrupted. And that's how all these corrupted creatures work. So this card actually gives you 4 points if your opponent is corrupted. However, if any player gets corrupted twice throughout the game, they immediately lose. And you can feel free to pause and see what some of these do. I'll explain some of them. Some of them are just straight points if you win it. Again, 26 or higher, or if not, the lower player gets corrupted. This one, you take it into your hand, it's actually a wild fighter of 5. That's pretty cool. This one, you just get to draw a card plus a point. This one, you may destroy this event after any Bolster Phase to get plus 2 strength. So these have some abilities along with this, but the main theme of this is getting the number of higher, winning the card, or if less, you have the lowest, you're corrupted. You get corrupted twice, you lose. Otherwise, if you get to the last card and it is taken, you then add up all your points, just like the other types of area decks, and whoever has the most is the winner. And finally, I'm going to show you all the legendary double and triple factions of both pre-built teams. This is the one for Team Hiss. Feel free to pause and take a closer look if you've liked. And here are the different factions for Team Galazar's pre-built team deck. Again, feel free to pause to look at these in more detail. Well, there you have faction fighters, and as I showed in the overview, there is different ways to build your deck and many different area decks to make each game feel different. Now, if you'd like to see all the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the fine folks at Thunderfinch Games would love your support.